Welcome to the Still Curtain podcast. It's Thursday, June 5th, and Aaron Rodgers is a Pittsburgh Steeler, sort of. I'm Josh Yourish, and today I'm joined by Shayne Kubas to break down the news that Aaron Rodgers intends to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers ahead of next week's minicamp, broke by Diana Rossini and Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Shayne, what is your just initial gut reaction? We've talked about this all offseason. This has been something that we've expected and then kind of stopped expecting because it dragged on for so long. Aaron Rodgers wanted to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings didn't want him. Finally, it seems like he is almost certainly going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And your first thought is and was when you saw the news, what?
It's finally over, folks. We don't have to talk about it as a hypothetical anymore. It's seemingly so, right? Because we're going to have to keep talking about it for multiple reasons. There's going to be a lot of things going on with it as we kind of progress into mandatory minicamp next week and training camp, all that good stuff. And we know Aaron Rodgers is going to be noteworthy for multiple reasons probably. But we don't have to talk about it in the way that we've been talking about. Like, well, what if and when and why and whatever else. It's like he's going to be on the team. Take that however way you want. We'll talk about that part of it too here today. But he seemingly is at least on this team or going to be on this team. We can talk about it in a more actual, like, projectable way.
And I think that's a great point because I couched it initially because he has not officially put pen to paper. But that is the last time I'm going to couch it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I trust this reporting. Even as mercurial and everything as Aaron Rodgers is an enigma, as he calls himself in a Netflix documentary that he made, he's going to sign. Like, this is going to happen. So I'm no longer going to couch it for the rest of the show it has not actually happened yet. This is done. He's a Steeler for all intents and purposes. We do not have the details of this deal other than it's going to be a 1-year deal.
Which makes sense.
Makes perfect sense, perfectly aligns with the timeline of trading George Pickens for next year's draft picks to get ammo to move up in that draft class, right? To try to draft a quarterback. We've talked about this a lot. That seems to be the plan for this front office. And my initial reaction beyond, okay, finally this is over,
relief,
which is relief and just, okay, we can talk about it now because it was so hard to talk about this team with he's probably the quarterback, but I'm only 80% sure.
Yeah.
My first reaction was, this makes sense because you cannot go into an NFL season with Mason Rudolph and Will Howard and Skylar Thompson as your quarterback options. You just can't do that. It's malpractice. And it's malpractice, especially when you layer on trading a second-round pick for DK Metcalf. Right? The other moves that the Steelers have made, presumably signing an extension for TJ Watt, which I talked about on Monday, something that I don't want to just throw Myles Garrett money at TJ Watt. Now I don't think this changes the timeline so drastically that I go from, I'm a bit trepidatious about giving a boatload of money to an aging TJ Watt where I see clear signs of decline, to give him whatever because you have a future Hall of Fame quarterback on the roster, because I don't view Aaron Rodgers right now as that caliber of player anymore in his career, as much as anyone wants to throw his touchdown to interception ratio or whatever you want to do, which people did with Russell Wilson as well, where they tried to say this is still the same guy. And I watch football. He's not the same guy. So I'm not going to treat it that way, but it does take it from, I'm worried about this TJ Watt thing. Maybe you should even consider trading him and continuing to get future assets to, let's just end the playoff drought. And I think Aaron Rodgers, on wit and veteran savvy and guile and still an impressive arm for the lack of mobility at this point in his career coming off of the Achilles, I think he's still capable of that. So to me, this is, okay, your aging roster makes more sense with this quarterback for 1 year, and then you still have the flexibility to go get the guy next year. It doesn't change anything about that long-term plan, and now your short-term plan is a lot more cemented and makes a whole hell of a lot more sense than having a win now-ish roster with the most expensive defense in the NFL, right? Like everything about the roster for its flaws that I see is built to win right now. Now you have a quarterback who theoretically fits that. So what does that make? Do you agree with that? Does it change your perspective on other things on the roster? Or were you just assuming this was going to happen so it doesn't really change anything?
I think you make a fair point about like this is a move that makes sense given the fact that even though they did trade away George Pickens, which theoretically lowers your ceiling offensively,
Mhm.
they granted they did address this with the draft of Caleb Johnson. They don't retain a guy that like Najee Harris is reliable as a 1,000-yard back. Like there's some stuff they did where it's like technically you're not maximizing 2025, but
Mhm.
we've kind of been wanting them to do more of those things. So I don't really
Yes.
care too much about that. And they weren't like completely future focused moves. It's more like we don't think Pickens is in the future, so let's get something for him now. That type of stuff. The Steelers weren't going to be taken seriously offensively if their quarterback was Mason Rudolph, right?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest difference between having Rodgers and not having him for 2025 is now teams at least have to take us somewhat seriously offensively. I don't know how seriously yet. That's the kind of the debate that people.
It's a big question. Yeah.
Because like to me, I think Aaron Rodgers is. You hope he's the 20th best quarterback in the NFL at this point. Like that's kind of where I think you like the realistic.
And maybe we can get into why. Like I kind of want to talk about him as a player.
We'll do that, but like that's I think kind of the hope, and I think that is enough given the quarterback play we've gotten out of this team over the past like 5 seasons. That might be enough to be a serious offense, right? Like that might be enough to complement a defense that is the highest paid in the sport for a reason, and also kind of not. We'll get into some of that too if we want, but like this team can at least be taken seriously as a playoff threat. Now, am I confident this is going to like break the playoff drought? Not necessarily, but I think it gives them a much better chance of doing that than if they did roll with Rudolph or Will Howard or whoever it may be. So,
yeah, and you would just, I won't say you in sense of you or all of Steelers fans. I'll talk to my personal feeling. We still have to see this season, and I obviously Aaron Rodgers is a declining player. There are a lot of frustrating things about how he only wants to run his offense. He wants to run his old West Coast stuff. Still, compared to aging Ben Roethlisberger for what he was, compared to Mason Rudolph going into a playoff game, compared to Russell Wilson going into a playoff game, assuming the Steelers can win 10 games again, and that doesn't feel like a big assumption, obviously, with Mike Tomlin. I think Aaron Rodgers will have me feeling the best going into a first round of the playoffs that I felt probably since, I don't know, pre-Ben injury,
20,
maybe?
yeah,
2020?
Yeah, 20, like, yeah. Well, even 2020, we were on that bad streak at the end of the year.
It
so
had fallen apart.
Yeah, so that's even,
Yes,
that's why I was like, maybe even before that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
that's why my instinct was to go before the Ben injury and like 2017, something like that.
Probably, yeah.
I don't think this roster is on par with that roster in any way.
Not talent, no.
But with the playoffs have expanded since then, and I think this is a roster with good coaching, which to me is a question mark in a 1-game playoff scenario. Over the long haul, it's not
right.
Can win a playoff game, and I think that matters. Like I think that's meaningful. I think it's Kevin Clark, who was previously at the Ringer, now at ESPN, and just does a lot of great work. He talks about this a lot, like the feeling around a building in the NFL when you have a quarterback and when you don't. And that's tangible for just like evaluating the young players on your roster, having a feeling of you're going into this season with a chance, right? I think that stuff really does matter, and you don't have any of it when Mason Rudolph is your quarterback. You have some of it with 1 year of Aaron Rodgers. You can trick yourself into it enough with 1 year of Aaron Rodgers. And not to go on a full diatribe, but right, the flags and pennants behind me are the Pirates and the Penguins, along with the Steelers. Like I'm a Pittsburgh sports fan. The Penguins tried to do this thing with previous iterations of the organization where they tried to middle it, right? They were like, we're trying to build for the future, but also win now with Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
And it feels like the Steelers are doing that right now.
Yeah.
But I like it a lot better in football where I think your roster building can be a lot more flexible. I think you can tear down and rebuild much quicker than you can in a sport like hockey that is more structure on the salary cap. It doesn't explode every year. It's fully guaranteed contracts, right? Like much harder to maneuver. In the NFL, I think you can manage this where you're in for this season as much as you're willing to be. But also, it makes sense on your timeline to trade George Pickens. So I actually like where the Steelers are at with a clear eye to the future. But also, this is the best option for this year, and it ties you into nothing long term. Like, I feel really good about that.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the NFL, too, is you're pretty much always working, unless you're like a Chiefs team that has Patrick Mahomes or, a Bills team that has Josh Allen, whatever. Most teams are working within like 2 to 3 year windows of trying to be competitive, right? So you want to maximize that window, but you also don't want to put yourself in a hole where, like, if you don't win in that 2 to 3 year period, you're screwed for 5 years, right? Like the Rams kind of are the team that people think of like, oh man, they really went all in. I'm like, but they've been competitive for now 5+ years in a row with Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff at different times, despite giving up all their picks to get players and this and that. Like they've still remained competitive because they turn the roster over, they add all this young defensive talent to the defensive line. Like there's ways to get away with this type of stuff at the NFL level that you can't always get away with in other sports, right? So for what the Steelers are doing, if you didn't think George was the future of the receiver, you trade him, right? And regardless of how people feel about that or not, you do that. You don't pay Najee Harris when he's given you so many carries and yards and all this stuff, despite being productive. You let him go to another team and you draft a young running back and hope he can replicate. Like that's the type of stuff you do to kind of focus on the future, while it's not really truly tearing the roster down in the meantime either. So I definitely agree with that kind of strategy there.
Do you feel, because I have been somebody, and I know Tommy has veered into this thought process at times. I don't know that he's fully there with me, and I don't even know that my heart's fully in it. But I have been somebody who's been a tear it down guy, just give me direction guy is ultimately where that comes from.
Right.
But the best way to do that, or the clearest way to do that, maybe not the best, the clearest way to do that is to trade veteran players, accumulate future assets.
Right.
And that's tearing it down, right? A real rebuild. Do you feel better about this model of we're still going to be competitive, but we're going to get move some assets into the future. We're going to have enough ammo to move up because we're not going to win 3 games in a season. We're not going to lose that many games in a season. Do you feel better about this where you're still keeping the culture intact? You're still looking to win every year. Your young players are not coming into an environment where they're just destined to lose, right? That doesn't really exist in the NFL. Even when the Dolphins tried to do it, right? Like the year they traded Minka to the Steelers, it just doesn't work. It's too short of a career span in the NFL to really tank. But do you prefer this model or the Lions or some of these other teams that have torn it down to the studs, got the young quarterback or got a veteran that they believe in for multiple years and have gone from there? Like, which would you prefer? Do you like this strategy?
I think the issue with really either one is ultimately what matters is how do you find the quarterback and the coach and get them in the same room and actually succeed from there. Because with the Lions, right, they did bottom out, but they got Jared Goff back in the Matthew Stafford trade. They didn't completely blow up the quarterback position, even though at first it looked like, well, Goff is just going to be a placeholder or whatever. But then they let him keep playing, and Ben Johnson comes in, and the offense sorts itself out. The offensive line comes like. All that had to come together, and they were able to get a guy like Penei Sewell to be the anchor of that line. Outside of Frank Ragnow too, gone, unfortunate for the Lions. But so many things had to fall in place for that to work ultimately still, right? And they had to get lucky with Goff kind of becoming a different version of himself that could be, a playoff contending quarterback, right?
And you had to have one of the best play callers in the NFL.
Right, exactly. Right. So for the Steelers, their path is going to have to be, because they know they can't lose enough. Like Tomlin isn't, you could trade all the veterans on this team. He'll find a way to win 8 games, or something like that. That's part of the good thing and bad thing about him is that you don't really have a choice if he's your coach to tear down. Like that's not how it's going to work. He's going to find a way to get these guys through a season and win. I mean, we saw in 2019, like if you ever wonder what its Steelers. I know the defense is great and everything, but if you ever wonder what its Steelers team could like possibly be bad wise, that's as bad as they're probably going to ever be, and they still win 8 games. Right. So for the way this team operates, if they're going to continue to employ Tomlin, especially, they do have to do it this way, where you're trying to retool the roster. Amar Khan's doing some more creative things than Colbert ever did with trading and things like that. And you have to hit on your draft picks, in particular, find a way to go up and get a quarterback that's actually viable as a long-term starter. And that's really the unanswered question, is if they can figure that out, then they'll probably be fine, like most teams are when they find a long-term starter quarterback. Until they do that, this model is just a theory, honestly, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And bringing it back to this year, because my mind always goes next and next and next and tumbles down. This season, with this roster as currently constituted, and I hinted at talking about like what are the Steelers actually getting with Rodgers, and I don't even want to go there yet. I kind of want to talk about the infrastructure that he is entering, whatever version you have of him in your mind, in your mind's eye, your imagination, whether it's the best version or the Enigma Netflix version that is not so great. What type of infrastructure is he entering? What do you think the fit will be with Arthur Smith? Is there such a thing as fit with a coordinator and Aaron Rodgers anymore, right? Like if Matt LaFleur couldn't get him to acquiesce fully to that, and it drove such a wedge between that relationship that drove him out of town, what is this going to look like in your opinion? What can it look like at its best? Is it at its best the Arthur Smith offense with him plugged in? Or is it the Aaron Rodgers offense with Smith plugged in? That was a lot I just threw at you, but what are your thoughts in that perspective?
I think in general, when you look at how Arthur Smith and him should operate, I think the best way, because you're talking about like how is the best version of this going to play out? Like what do I think would be the best way to kind of go about it? I think the quick passing game should run through Aaron Rodgers. Like his decision making, his idea of how that should operate should be how they run that part of it.
Very much like career Ben.
Pretty much, yeah. Like you want him to handle the quick game stuff, make decisions on the field, and that way change plays to get into those really easy throws that you want to try to get easy yards, right? The run game, obviously, and also the play action game off of that all to me has to come from Arthur Smith, because he wanted to, and it's what he said, is that he, like Rodgers speaking, wanted to go to a team that was going to run the football, allow him to try to create chunk plays off play action off of that. No one wants to do that as much as Arthur Smith does. We kind of know that about him. So I think that element of the passing game and the offense in general should be Arthur Smith's doing. Like he should handle the run game stuff, make sure that that's going well, and then you can play action off that, try to get those deep shots with a DK Metcalf and guys like that. So I think the balancing of that is how you can kind of make this work the best, where Rodgers still gets his say on a lot of the passing game stuff, especially like the early down passing stuff, the quick game, all that good stuff he likes to do with the screens and slot stuff and all that. Then the rest of it should be where Arthur Smith comes in and does what he does best, which is coordinate the run game and get those play action stuff going. So
I think last year there was a limitation on Rodgers' mobility. We saw this with Kirk Cousins as well. Both players, very similar situations coming off of Achilles injuries. I think Cousins was more limited, or it was more publicized how limited he was.
He also was banged up more on top of that from what I've heard too. So like it was just everything was messed up with him.
Everything was bad there. But both had an issue in kind of outside zone-y offenses getting to those stretch runs for those handoffs, right? Like the Falcons had to just build this weird pistol offense because of it. And the Jets had a lot of issues in the run game to the point where like there were questions about if Breece Hall wanted out of New York, or everything was a disaster there. But I think something that works well, and maybe a decision they made with Rodgers a little bit in mind, like I still love everything about the Caleb Johnson fit in an Arthur Smith offense regardless. He is so exceptional on pitch plays.
I was about to say, we know how much Arthur Smith likes the toss. It might actually work this time.
Caleb Johnson is so awesome good at it. Yeah, he's really awesome at it. Yeah, and I'm probably not the smart enough football mind to like give you why he's so great at it. Like
one cut vision thing. Yeah,
it's building speed, right? The way he builds the top end speed, like but even compared to how he is on outside zone, just if you pitch the ball to Caleb Johnson on a toss play, he's electric with it. And I think that pairing is something I'm really excited about because Rodgers doesn't have to get to these long stretch handoffs because you got the right running back for this system, which is another thing. Like, okay, yeah, move on from Najee Harris, get the young guy. The young guy is also a better fit and maybe a better player. Like, we'll see how much better of a player he is.
Right.
But he's definitely a better fit. In the passing game, I don't feel like what the Steelers have right now is going to be enough, especially considering the youth and the lack of size, because Rodgers has always liked bigger receivers and he has always liked veteran receivers. Do you think a trade for an Allen Lazard is coming or a Gabe Davis is coming? Like, what are your thoughts in the receiver room? Because it feels like we knew this domino was going to fall. Now that it has, what other stuff will it affect?
So I think there's going to be some receiver move of some kind. I don't think it's going to be the Lazard thing. I just have a hard time thinking the Steelers will do that.
I agree, but it's just the name that's always tied.
Yeah, it's always the name. Yeah, so like I don't think they'll do that. Davis might be on this team at some point. I think it depends on his health. I think that's why his meeting didn't end with a contract now. I think they wanted to get an idea where he's at physically and kind of go from there. But I think ultimately what you hope for is, regardless of whether there's a move or not, you hope that Roman Wilson can be his Randall Cobb type of player, right? And I think that that's a fair comparison overall, honestly, between the two of them in a lot of ways. So you hope that his second year can be more fruitful. You hope that Calvin Austin can do some stuff as like a gadgety type for them too, again, and bring some speed down the field, as well as what DK does, obviously, too. But yeah, I think he's going to have to work a little bit differently with this group than he's done in the past. And that's one of the reasons of many, honestly, but one of the big reasons why, if you are skeptical about this working out, it is the fact that he is kind of the way he is with what he wants, right? Like, it's hard to get players to just get up to speed with that quickly, which is a good thing that he is signing now, opposed to during training camp when there's less time to figure all this out. So I will give him credit for that.
And you spoke to being skeptical.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're talking a lot of positives here, and I think you are as well. Like,
it's because Mason Rudolph was the other option before.
Yes.
That's the problem.
It's so tied into
it's relative, right?
Yes, it's so relative. Like, I am excited about this insofar as I did not want to watch a full season of Mason Rudolph play football. I am not excited about like some Super Bowl window, 2-year Super Bowl window opening, anything like that. And as we see here, it could be worse. We could be Cleveland in the chat. Absolutely. And this is another interesting thought that I've already seen on social media.
Yeah, he wants
trade for Terry McLaurin. What are your thoughts there, Shayne? Because I don't think now Rodgers is here, we go all in. No, right? Like, you need to save assets for the quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think I like the idea. Obviously, every team would love to have Terry McLaurin on their team.
He looked sick in a Steelers uniform in the Photoshop I saw. He looked good in it.
He does look good. But I think he just wants his money, and he'll get it from them because they've gone all in. The Commanders, if anyone's going all in, they've gone all in. So
and they should on this rookie quarterback window. That's my dream. That's my dream. That's every team's dream.
That is the dream.
But that's the dream, right? That is the dream.
It's hard to get.
You hit on a rookie like that, and you can go on a crazy spending spree. And the thought with this veteran, not to jump what you were going to say, but the thought with this veteran Indianapolis Colts model of like plug and play Phillip Rivers to Matt Ryan to what, like our version of that, the Steelers version of that. The thought is you also have a relatively cheap quarterback. You can also spend around it to try to win. I just think it's a lot different when it's a young guy like Jaden Daniels or others that have gotten, Jalen Hurts before he got paid when he took the Eagles to the Super Bowl. There are so many examples of rookie contract quarterbacks taking their Joe Burrow. CJ Stroud even. It's different than that because the Asian guy is usually not that good, but it's still the same thought process.
Yeah.
And so there could be a temptation to like throw some resources at this. But I just don't think the Steelers are going to do it.
No, I don't think so either. And I think it's fair to say that they shouldn't because, again,
nor should they.
I don't really know at this point how high I can realistically put the ceiling on this team, almost regardless of what they would do, right? Because we just honestly, and we can kind of get into this now if you want to, we
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
really
it's fine.
know what Aaron Rodgers is going to be in terms of how good he actually can still be at 41 years old. Because
Mhm.
if you look at last year, now it's the Jets. There's an element of it being the Jets, right? The
Yeah.
fact that he gets hurt in the first 4 plays of his first year is also just a Jets thing to happen. Like, but then they still win that game, but then are terrible pretty much the rest of the year. But like, so there's an element of like, is it just the way the Jets are and just everything? And the Steelers maybe will make him all of a sudden play more, play more like himself. I think there's somewhere in the middle where I think you could get a similar, if not a little bit better version of him than you got last year for the Jets on the Steelers in terms of his individual level of play. But how much is like how high does that ultimately get you in the quarterback ranks? I still think at best you're looking at somewhere between like the 16th and 20th best quarterback in the league, which as a 41-year-old, pretty solid. Not everybody can be Tom Brady at 44 or however old he was and still be top 10 guy, but I think that's what you hope for. And if you can get that out of him, that might be enough if this defense is as good as it can be. That's really the question at this point.
And to me, I want to talk. It's time to talk about what Rodgers
Yeah,
is as a player. But you mentioned like the defense as good as it can be. To me, it's just not going to be as long
yeah,
as Mike Tomlin is running it, and that's
fair.
like the crux of a lot of issues
Mhm.
with this, and with everything with the Steelers going forward. But agree in general, like yes, they could win a playoff game if Rodgers is somehow at whatever the best version of him looks like now. I just don't know, like his I'm trying to dig through the numbers right now, so filibustering a little bit. Like
Mhm.
his time to throw continues to drop, his average
Yep.
depth of target continues to drop. This is all stuff we see from aging quarterbacks, and
Yeah, it
it
just makes sense. Yeah.
it makes sense. Yeah, like it is both the best way for them to continue to cash checks and play NFL football, and a damning signal that they're no longer who they were.
Right.
And so we as Steelers fans need to recognize that this is not Aaron Rodgers who is, tearing things up and pointing at Mike Tomlin and whatever. I just don't think he's going to be that type of player. He was so afraid of contact last year. And
Mhm.
that's what, like you mentioned Brady, and he has warped our minds into what is
Yeah.
possible for a quarterback. And the same way LeBron is doing the NFL, or in the NBA, like this is not easy now
No, it's not
because the
fun.
greatest ever did it. It is now not easy to play well into
Yeah.
your 40s. And Brady didn't have the torn Achilles that Rodgers is trying to deal with. And even for Brady, the same way it was for Peyton, the same way it was for Eli, the same way it was for name any other aging quarterback. Like those two just come to mind because it was so demonstrative. They do not want to get hit anymore. Same way
No.
it was for Derek Carr last year, who wasn't even that old. And once you're no longer willing to stand in the pocket, you lose access to so many throws.
Yeah, you lose a lot of ceiling to your level of play because at the end of the day, like that, the sport is a contact sport for a reason.
Mhm.
Like being able to run around or just extend plays, stay in the pocket longer, wait for stuff to open up, and being willing to do so because you think you can navigate the pocket. That's a big part of playing quarterback, right? Like it's a big reason why guys end up not succeeding in this league is because they can't do that stuff very well.
It's a reason I wasn't in on Tyler Shuck, but
Yeah,
continue.
right. Hey, Mr. Fadeaway. Anyway, no, it's just again like with these older quarterbacks, like naturally they aren't going to be as durable. They're not going to want to take as many hits, and like that's okay. But it does again just limit what you're able to do and the overall ceiling of your team. Now, maybe in the playoffs, Rodgers would be more willing to take that on the chin if he has to make him throw it down the field,
Mhm.
and because again, you're playing for your life at that point, right? But at the same time, like getting there is going to be part of the problem. And I think the best path for this team to win a playoff game is to get not just the 7th seed, but ideally like the 5th seed if they're not going to win the division, something like that. Because then you get a chance to play a lower level division winner, probably the AFC South, whoever ends up winning that, probably the Texans, right?
Mhm.
Like that's kind of the game you want to get into because then you actually have a legit shot. If you're going to Buffalo
Yeah.
in the winter, you're probably not winning. I don't care if
Good
Aaron
luck.
Rodgers is good or not. Yeah. So it ultimately comes down to like how high the ceiling is going to be for the offense and for the team in general, and can they win enough games to put themselves out of that 7 seed discussion that keeps getting them pounded every year in the playoffs?
Yeah, and Brady too. because like that's the natural comparison of an aging quarterback.
Right.
Brady was so successful, not just with all the pre-snap chess match stuff that like him and Peyton were the best at, but Brady always got the ball out of his hand quickly.
Yeah.
Brady always was the best at small pocket movements, small manipulations in the pocket to get the ball out of his hands quickly. That hasn't been Rodgers' game. Like when he's at his best, he was so mesmerizing on second reaction plays, right? Like one of the popular comparisons for Caleb Williams was at the ceiling is Aaron Rodgers. And like, that's because he's such a creative player back there. And that's when that's zapped from anything he can do. And he's reluctant to be a point and shoot type of Brock Purdy plus, then you end up in this difficult middle ground where like, what do you have left?
Right.
And maybe it's probably going to look a lot like the late Ben seasons where everything's really close to the line of scrimmage. His time to throw continues to drop near 2.5 seconds. And there's just not a lot you can do with that offensively unless you have an elite run game and an elite defense, which sounds like Mike Tomlin's dream.
Yes.
So
that's what he wants. Yeah. Whether he gets it is the question. But.
So there's something about this that's like going to test Mike Tomlin's philosophy of football with a quarterback he believes to probably still be one of the better ones in the NFL, but I don't feel that way at all about Aaron Rodgers. And where would you mentioned like 20th best? Where would you realistically, like that's the best case scenario? If you're ranking quarterbacks for just the season or drafting, starting a team, how just for one season, how far down the list is Aaron Rodgers for you? Because for me, he's probably 28, like a little bit before Russell Wilson, but not by a lot.
I'd probably have him somewhere in like the mid 20s, somewhere to 23 to 26. Like, because I think the thing with him is because he's a veteran to the nth degree, a veteran.
Yeah.
There's an element of like just understanding the game that puts him ahead of guys who have both not played very well and also are young and don't know as much as him.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like you have to put him ahead of those guys until
so you're probably going to take him over JJ McCarthy, like
because you just don't know what JJ McCarthy is, right?
Yeah, like, situationally dependent. Like
he'll probably be better because he's playing for the Vikings.
Yeah, so, which is why Aaron Rodgers
wanted to play for the Vikings.
Yeah,
but like that's separate from McCarthy as a player, right? So like if we're just judging off players, he's somewhere in that range. And then I think his, like we talked about, his ceiling could really fluctuate anywhere from there up to like the middle of the pack, because I think if he is more willing to do some of the stuff that he didn't do with the Jets, because maybe he trusts the run game here more, maybe he trusts Mike Tomlin more with the defensive side of things, more respect for him, I think, in general than he would have had for Robert Saleh. I think he might be a little bit more willing to do stuff that normally he wouldn't do, just because of that relationship he might have with Tomlin at this point, right? Like that feels like what's going on here to some degree. And I don't think the Steelers would be interested in the version of him that they saw last year as much as the version they think they can get out of him if they can get the offense rolling with the run game and the play action stuff. Because like you said, he's probably not going to stand in the pocket and find stuff down the field anymore. But if you line up a play action shot for him, if you give him a clear runway to be able to throw the ball down the field and not have to worry about the pressure as much, that's how you can get more of that, average depth of target to go up again, and that time to throw up a little bit again, because you're scheming it up for him instead of just asking him to do it in the drop back passing game.
Yeah, the arm is still there. From everything,
yeah, he can still throw. Yeah, absolutely.
The arm's still there. Like it's just mobility stuff. It's willingness to take hits. It's all these other things. You have a chuckle.
Well, two reasons. One, we have this will suck with or without. Hey, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say you're wrong for sure.
It depends on your definition of suck, right? Because
the Steelers don't.
To me, the Steelers, they're not going to suck.
They can't.
It sucks to continually watch my favorite team win 9 games or 10 games and lose in the first round of the playoffs, because that is a incredibly frustrating. Like we call that purgatory, right? Because it's like stuck in the middle. It's hell. But
it's not good.
But the Steelers will not suck. With or without Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers will not suck.
That's the problem. Is like at this point, like that's actually the issue. Is that it's that we don't suck.
Yes,
it's that we can't. you really like you could.
It's impossible.
They literally tried their best multiple times since Tom's been here to be bad. It felt like because of injuries and other things. And he was just like, no.
Yeah.
And then because you just have to sit there like, all right, like we could be like 5-7, and I'm like, well, he's gonna win 4 of these games down the stretch. Like I know he's going to.
Yeah.
I don't know how he's gonna do it, or I don't think he knows either. And sometimes it feels like he's just like, all right, guys, all right, TJ, I need you to force a fumble here. And he just does it. Like,
yeah.
Because we talked about this on our last show with that I was on with Tommy on Wednesday yesterday, and it seems like Tomlin is basically able to just convince his players to like, hey, we need a turnover like right now specifically, and they just do it somehow. It's like it helps that it's TJ Watt and like guys like that are on the team, right? Like he does that type of stuff. But
yeah,
like TJ Watt is specifically more impactful for the Steelers because of the fact he is a playmaking edge defender and not just a like pure like pass rusher type, because they need weird stuff to happen all the time to win these games. And he's the weirdest in terms of that type of stuff, because he'll just force a fumble randomly or intercept a pass for some reason.
Yeah.
Like stuff like normal edge rushers don't do that. So we need that type of stuff to be able to win games.
Yeah. I had a rant about it last season of like, and it's been a thing I've talked about this offseason based on Ben Johnson's comments that I've referenced so many times about like the most important stat for determining the outcome of football games is now EPA per drop back, or it was passing EPA, something like that. Yeah. And instead of turnovers, and to Tomlin, that would be heresy.
Yeah. No way.
And last year, my rant was like, he tries to distill every football game down into 3 plays instead of winning, instead of winning 70 of 100, he wants to win 2 of 3, and that's good enough. And sometimes it is, but
that's
ultimately,
the part that sucks about it.
Yeah. It brings bad teams into games with you when you're the better team, and it brings good teams into the games with you. So
it's why the Ravens can never seemingly beat us consistently, because they will be the better team all day, but the receivers can't catch for some reason, or Lamar throws the stupidest pick of the season when he normally doesn't do that, or whatever. And it's like, and everyone's like, oh, this why can't they beat the? It's like, because the Steelers play football weird, guys. That's why.
They're not playing the same game.
When you go play the Steelers, it's not like playing any other team in the sport. Like you have to prepare for the weirdest things. It's like, oh man, we got to really be careful, hold on to the ball in this specific moment of the game, or else TJ Watt's going to strip the ball from us somehow. He hasn't touched the quarterback all day, but then he gets a strip sack. Like, what's going on? It's really weird to play the Steelers.
And I would rather have a guy like Aaron Rodgers that's had a lot of magic in his history and has shown the ability to create in big moments than Mason Rudolph for this season. Yeah. And you still are not sacrificing the long-term vision. Yeah. So ultimately, I don't know. What would you grade this signing? We've talked about it so much, so it's weird. It's weird to be talking about it now that it's real, because we've belabored it so much. Like, we know what this is going to kind of be. To me, it's like an A- because the other, or an A, I don't even know. Maybe it's an A+ because there were no other options other than Mason Rudolph.
I think for me, I have to give it a like. You did the only thing you could do.
Yeah, like
I'm not even gonna give it a letter grade.
It was pass fail.
Yeah, it's like you did the thing basically. Like if you did do this, it's like everyone's gonna point and laugh at you. So it's good that you did it, right? Like, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
It's the points you get on the SAT for writing your name or whatever that is, right?
Yeah, it's like, all right, I guess we're a real football team this year.
You had to. There were no other options.
Yeah, because would this team have won 9 games still? Yeah, it would have been the stupidest 9 games you've ever seen, but it would have been 9 games. Now it might be like 10.
And it still might be the stupidest 10 games you've ever seen.
Well, there'll be one really good Aaron Rodgers game and then 10 just of the worst games of all time, but the Steelers win them at the end for no reason. It's like, all right, like, I don't know.
Heading to Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Sure. Well, Josh Allen will become rookie Josh Allen for 5 minutes, and then that's all we need. So that's
it's a weird spot to be in, but I've been doing this show for a year now, and I've been constantly talking about, like, just give me direction. And I see the George Pickens trade getting assets into next year's draft showed me, and not drafting Shedeur Sanders, showed me the light at the end of the tunnel. They're going to take their big swing next year. This is what you had to do for this year to field a real NFL football team and not, I don't even know. But it's just, I don't know. It's so hard to assess from that perspective because the alternative isn't tanking. Because if the alternative was tanking, I would say don't sign Aaron Rodgers, go win 4 games and get whoever is QB1 next year. And for any other franchise, almost, this roster's too good to say that, but any roster you put out there with Mason Rudolph would win 5-6 games, right? And Mason Rudolph probably wouldn't play the whole season, and you'd get a couple Will Howard games, and you would be in the top 10 of the draft for sure. And with the Steelers, that's not even a plausible outcome.
That's one of the things I was laughing at earlier because I saw a tweet from, I forget who it was, so I have to look at it again. But it was like the Steelers would have been better off starting Will Howard and tanking than signing Aaron Rodgers to probably go 9-8. And I'm like, here's the problem: they would have still won like 8 games with Will Howard. And like, I know that that's stupid to say, but like, can you really tell me that you don't feel that way? Like, can any fan of this team or people who follow this football team look me in the eye and be like, yeah, they'll win 4 games next year with. They could start Skylar Thompson all 17 games. They'd win 6 or 7 of them probably. Like it's just
the Duck Hodges thing ended tanking from being a possibility.
And that no offense, like I know people love Duck. I respect him for one of the first Steelers game I ever went to was the Bills game where he threw 4 picks. That dude stunk. I'm sorry. Like that was terrible. And they still won games with him playing. Like that's just how this team operates. Like and that game wasn't even a blowout, I don't think. I think it was pretty close still. And he threw 4 interceptions. Like, it's just, they don't care. Like, Will Howard could have like a 50 passer rating as a rookie. They'd probably still win 8 games. Something would happen.
And then half the fan base would talk themselves into the next big bet.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he had 10 touchdowns, like he had 17 interceptions too. So, like, but like it's just what they do. They figure it out. It doesn't make sense, but we know.
Yeah.
We know about it.
And that's just going to be the reality of it. I think for me, that's pretty much what I have to say on it, right? Like, I don't know that there's anything. Do you have any last closing points before we close this out? Because the alternative was still winning pretty much the same amount of games and feeling worse about the first round playoff game. This makes you feel a little bit better.
This signing basically is like, it's a playoff amplifier. Yeah. Like, all right, if we get in, which it's a hope amplifier. Yeah. Like if we get in, we might win that game instead of probably lose by like 20 points like we do every year for the past 8 years. Right. Yeah. So that's really what the difference is here. And it is good to know that like that is more of a possibility. But I do want to, so this is from Greg Rosenthal. I just saw he just tweeted this.
Yeah.
Among the similarities between the Steelers and Jets, they both wanted Justin Fields more than Aaron Rodgers this offseason. Very funny, Greg. Don't never say that again to my face, though. Ever, please don't do that. No, anyway, should be fun week 1.
Yep.
Nothing else. So,
Aaron Rodgers is the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, and that's gonna mean a lot of things to talk about. If nothing else,
if he's gonna play for the Steelers.
So please subscribe to the Still Curtain podcast because you can listen to me on Mondays. You can listen to Shayne and Tommy on Wednesdays, and throughout the season, I'll be doing instant reactions. Yep. Shayne will hop on with me sometimes. Sometimes I'll have guests. It's a great show. If this is your first time joining us, please like and subscribe. We'll have a lot more Aaron Rodgers stuff. I'll have more to talk about on Monday about this, as I'm sure you and Tommy will next Wednesday. So please subscribe. Please support the show. We really appreciate it. That'll do it from us. Thank you for joining me, Shayne. And until I talk to you on Monday, as always, go Steelers.